People are buzzing about whether or not Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice have been banned from this year's Royal Ascot. Obviously, their father is on the Epstein list. I mean, all up and through it. But so is their mother, and quite excessively as well. But also, so is Princess Beatrice. Princess Eugenie at this time has not been involved as far as what's been released so far, but the mention of her was made by her mother as well, and neither Princess Beatrice nor Princess Eugenie have spoken out against their father, their mother, or Epstein. And it's also particularly interesting because Princess Eugenie is the co-founder of the Anti-Slavery Collective, which is an anti-human exploitation and trafficking organization. And at this time, she is still very much involved with that organization, as well as with the podcast that goes alongside it. So people are obviously concerned. Where do these young ladies stand? How involved were they? What else can we expect to come out? And what are we dealing with so far? People are wondering if they've actually been banned or can they expect to be seen? We're going to read the article from Feminagra, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on the other side. So let's get started. Thank you for clicking on my video, and if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll be taking a look at an article from Feminagra. I'll be dissecting it and giving my thoughts on the other side regarding whether or not Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice have actually been banned from the Royal Ascot for 2026, and if so, what are my thoughts? I have plenty, because of course I do. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share so that more people can find us. Once again, this article is in Feminagra, written by Miss Historian, titled Palace Moves to Sideline Beatrice and Eugenie from Royal Ascot as Epstein Scrutiny Grows. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie have been told they cannot attend Royal Ascot, according to reports in the Daily Fail and People magazine. The decision follows renewed scrutiny after the release of the Epstein files and their parents' long-documented ties to Jeffrey Epstein. If Royal Ascot reports are true, the move is less about horses and hats and more about royal survival. Royal Ascot ranks among the monarchy's most photographed traditions, with a carriage procession that has run since 1825. Those invited to take part usually stay at Windsor Castle the night before, a detail that underlines who is in and who is out. Attendance signals acceptance, and visibility signals favor. Which is why any royal absence sets off instant speculation. When a senior figure skips Ascot, the questions start before the final carriage rolls in. Last year, Finding Balance did a great deal of heavy lifting to explain Kate Middleton's absence from the event, despite what many observers noted was already a relatively light public schedule. According to People, a source claimed, quote, Beatrice has taken it the hardest. She's been completely blindsided by all of this. The sisters and palace offices declined to comment. The Daily Fail went further, reporting that the exclusion could extend beyond Ascot and apply to public-facing royal events for the foreseeable future. It also claimed that Prince William advised family members not to be photographed alongside the sisters this year. The palace has not confirmed any of it, but the direction is clear. The York name has become radioactive to the royal brand. The renewed scrutiny leads back to Prince Andrew's long association with Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew withdrew from public duties in 2019 after his BBC Newsnight interview drew global backlash. I mean, that was a particularly horrible interview. In 2022, Queen Elizabeth removed his military titles and patronages after a judge refused to dismiss Virginia Giuffre's civil claim. Andrew settled the lawsuit without admitting liability and has continued to deny wrongdoing. He did, however, pay a huge settlement reportedly amounting to £12 million. Giuffre died by suicide in 2025, and her posthumous memoir reopened questions many in the palace had hoped were fading. Attention has not focused on Andrew alone. Sarah Ferguson has appeared in released Epstein correspondence, including emails in which she sought financial help from him. She was also just full of adoration for that man. It was borderline obsessive, and it made me very uncomfortable. Last year, further document releases intensified the fallout. Ferguson was branded a hypocrite after emails showed her privately describing Epstein as a supreme friend while publicly vowing to cut ties following his conviction. Several charities reportedly severed relationships with her after the disclosures, and she stepped down as a hospice patron amid the controversy. you know, while I'm glad she's no longer working with hospice patients, it still bothers me that she was in such close proximity to any vulnerable group of people. It's alarming. Other emails suggested that Ferguson and Princess Beatrice discussed softening press language about Epstein, raising uncomfortable questions about what Beatrice understood at the time and complicating later claims of surprise. In another message, Ferguson told Epstein that Princess Eugenie was on a shagging weekend, language that critics argue was inappropriate given his conviction. Okay, so yes, that is one layer to it. Her comment about her daughter having sex over the weekend was wildly inappropriate, especially considering it was after he was convicted as a sex offender. But two, it was inappropriate in general because that's her daughter and this is some random man. Why are you sharing your daughter's sexual proclivities with anyone, let alone a male? What is even that? Why is that even his business? Why is that even your business? And if it is your business because of concern, why is that your business to share? I genuinely did not understand that. The context made it worse, but the general comment was wrong on its own. There were so many layers of disrespect, in my opinion, but also just, I mean, it was overstepping on a mild note. It was overstepping, but at its core, it felt predatory. It absolutely did. Against that backdrop, Prince Andrew was reportedly arrested last month on suspicion of misconduct in public office and detained for questioning. Palace sources say senior figures have since held meetings about managing the York fallout. In that climate, even a ceremonial fixture like Royal Ascot starts to look less like a tradition and more like a reputational risk. This is a line in the Daily Fail that reports that matters. The palace accepts that any suggestion the sisters benefited from the York fortune poses a risk to the wider family. That is the calculation. This is not about punishing Beatrice and Eugenie. It is about protecting the brand. The monarchy stood by Andrew for years, even as public confidence eroded. Other family members, including Meghan, Sussex, and Prince Harry, often absorbed hostile headlines while Andrew continued to appear at Christmas walks and private gatherings. William and Kate reportedly chose to remain living near Andrew, despite the controversy surrounding him. Only when the Epstein files resurfaced with fresh force did the institution move more decisively to create distance. A ban from Ascot carries a symbolic message. It shields the royal box from damaging headlines and reduces the risk of uncomfortable photographs, but it does little to resolve the deeper concerns that continue to circle the fallen House of York. The palace may bar Beatrice and Eugenie from Ascot, but the obvious questions remain. If exclusion from royal events is framed as accountability for associations with Epstein, will the same standard apply to other senior royals whose names have surfaced in related disclosures or whose financial networks have drawn scrutiny, including those closer to the line of succession? That's my question as well. Now, again, we've talked about Prince William being named in the Epstein files, and we've also talked about having two organizations, one being Earthshot, receiving donations from an Epstein affiliate, one in which the affiliate was talking about a torture video with Epstein, and then another was Wild Aid, which he was an ambassador for, which accepted donations from Epstein after his 2008 conviction. William is named in the Epstein files a few times, in a few different ways. So is Prince Edward. So if we're going to start this process, why don't we just go on down the line and say, hey, all of you don't need to appear in public for a while until we figure out what's going on and proper responses can be had or can be made. It's a little bit harder with William because, again, he is the heir. And not to put down King Charles or whatever, but he could become king any day now. King Charles is sick. And regardless of his prognosis, he is still up there in age as well. So Prince William could become king any day now. That makes this an even stickier situation for them. Now, for me, it's cut and dry. For me, I think it's pretty clear what they need to do. But I've been a whole, abolish the monarchy since the very beginning. And I'm also American. So my word is shit in this conversation. This is just an opinion, but it doesn't go far. But as far as what they should do regarding anyone related to the House of York, why would they invite them? Now, I got the question a couple of weeks ago. I got this comment. I can't remember if it was a comment or email, whatever. I got this question a couple of weeks ago that asked, why is it that you think it's unfair for Harry and Meghan to be asked about their biological family or Harry's biological family and their goings on, but you want to hold Eugenie and Beatrice responsible for their parents? And I read that comment And I mulled it over, and it was a comment because I saw some of the responses. Now, the majority of you who responded to it, I didn't have to say anything because you were kind of like, this is obvious. Does this really need to be explained? One of the comments simply read, "Please tell me you understand the difference between these two situations. Please tell me." And it reminded me of when I would get in trouble at school and then I'd have to come home and explain it. And my parents had a practice that was far more impactful than simply yelling at me or punishing me. If I did something horrible, they would often say, "Explain what you were thinking before you made this decision." And it was more so my mom who did this. And so I would have to explain, like, okay, so listen, I plagiarized on this paper. This was in 4th grade. I plagiarized a paper about lions. That was my responsibility. That was my task. I was supposed to write a whole 4-page report about lions. The easiest task in the world. And I love lions. I knew a lot about lions. But I just genuinely did not feel like doing the assignment. So I just printed off this thing from the internet. And I was so lazy. I whited out the credentials and then I just Xeroxed it with the credentials whited out on the, I didn't even retype it. I kept the pictures, I kept everything. And so when I turned it in, I got in trouble. They threatened to arrest me, but that was a scare tactic. Y'all, I was almost booked. And so I went home and I had to explain it to my mom. And so they let me wait a week to determine what my punishment would be. So that was a week of hell. I have never copied, lied, done anything deceitful in my life since then. They scared the shit out of me. And so when I went home, my mom was like, "So I got a call from your school. What were you thinking?" She stared me in the face. She said, "Explain to me what you were thinking. Why did you do this?" And so everything I said, she was just like, And I could hear it in her, how stupid what I was saying was. It was just a puddle of excuses. And so when I read that comment, why did I relive that moment? And I said, this is a parent. I would hate for anybody to say, "Explain what you were thinking when you wrote this. Please tell me she doesn't have to describe the difference between these situations to you. Please tell me she doesn't need to break that down." And I got triggered. I said, "Oh my God, y'all got in trouble." And it doesn't surprise me that the person who wrote the comment deleted it shortly after, because shit, I would have. But here's the explanation for that, because maybe somebody needs to know. The difference is Harry and Meghan have absolutely nothing to do with Epstein, with Andrew's going on, with the Yorks as a whole, or with anything that Prince Harry's biological family got into. Their dirty deeds are absolutely their business, and they're simply related to these people. They're not associated with their deeds, so they should not be held responsible. Not only that, they moved away. They separated themselves, their brand, their work, all things family related are now separate. The Sussexes are on an island on their own. They're doing their own thing and doing quite well at their own thing. The difference here is they weren't, one, Harry and Meghan were not named in the Epstein files, so they shouldn't be asked about them in general. No one anyone who's not associated with it should not be involved. They shouldn't be asking. It just muddies the water. It changes the dynamic of the conversation, and it helps them to deflect blame elsewhere, something that Harry and Meghan have been experiencing since being in the royal family. They are always trying to scapegoat them. It's unfair, it's not right, and it's a distraction from the real impactful work that Harry and Meghan are doing, as we discussed at our live stream last week. Now, as far as the York sisters, they are not responsible for their parents at all. Let's make that very clear. They are not responsible. They are responsible for themselves. And because they are in such close proximity to the people who are being named in the Epstein files in horrible ways, especially Andrew, he's been one of the people who's taken the biggest hit from being involved because he's done the most dirty deeds that have been revealed so far. He's also sued by one of the victims. He also paid off that victim. His involvement is at a level that other people so far have not been. But again, we haven't seen everything. The reason that's so important for Eugenie and Beatrice is, one, those are his daughters. They still continue to show up with him at public events, which is probably one of the reasons why they're not invited to Royal Ascot. Aside from what Andrew has done, aside from all the other rumors and things like that, that alone, the fact that they continue to show up with him in public spaces for years, and not just them, but Prince William and Kate Middleton have too. They even allowed him to drive them a couple of times. So did Queen Elizabeth. She allowed him to speak on her behalf prior to her death. So the whole family has rallied around Andrew in weird ways. But the reason this is hitting Beatrice and Eugenie so hard is because, one, they're at the bottom of the totem pole. poll with the current standing of the royal family at this time. So they're the easiest targets. That's what happens when scapegoats move on, new scapegoats emerge, which is why the enablers, the flying monkeys, that's why they tried to keep Harry and Meghan as the scapegoats. They needed them to be at the bottom of the totem pole so that everyone else was safe. Now that they've moved on, new scapegoats have emerged. But aside from that, because they've been named, because both of their parents have been so heavily involved in the Epstein files and so heavily involved with Epstein, and they haven't spoken out against them, it makes them look suspicious as well because of the proximity they have to these two predators and enabling predators. Not only that, but Eugenie actually is a co-founder of the Anti-Slavery Collective, which aims to help victims of oppression, of trafficking. Honestly, the demographic that organization aids is the same demographic of people that Andrew allegedly was harming with Epstein. So that close connection is of concern for a lot of people. That is already raising a lot of eyebrows, especially since she hasn't spoken out against Andrew's behavior or the things that have been alleged against him. She doesn't have to disown her dad, but putting out a statement, especially given her position with the Anti-Slavery Collective, would have been in her best interest a long time ago, just to make it clear that, hey, we're kind of like King Charles did. The law is the law. We'll let the law see to the whole process, blah, blah, blah. The whole generic statement. She could have done a little generic statement, said, hey, we're monitoring the situation closely. I in no way condone the acts that my father has been alleged or has been accused of, and due process is necessary, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a lawyer, but they could have put out some kind of generic statement that didn't exactly throw her dad under the bus, but certainly protected her, especially given the position she has and the organization she's in. Like I said, it raised a lot of concerns for me because I said, is this just simply a proximity issue? And it's just, it just looks bad, but maybe there's no intersection? Or is this shooting fish in a barrel for Andrew? Because it would be really, really hard for me if I saw something like that in a family member of mine, and then I worked with an organization that literally helps that targeted demographic of oppressed people, and then I have an alleged predator that has oppressed these same groups of people. It would be really hard for me to be quiet about that. It would be really hard. It wouldn't be hard for me. It wouldn't be hard for me to speak out against them. It wouldn't be hard for me to cut ties with them immediately and say, hey, I'm happy to backtrack should you be found innocent, but I can't take any chances. These people have already been through enough, and I don't want them to feel like I'm putting them in proximity to a predator. I would immediately stand up for the victims. And if I had to backtrack and say, hey, he was exonerated or found innocent or whatever the case, which Andrew is not going to be. But I'm just saying, in this hypothetical situation, should I have to backtrack on a statement, on a very firm and definitive statement, I absolutely would if I found out I was wrong. But the first order of business would be disassociating this predator from anything that I have going on with victims, especially victims who are in the same demographic of people that he was allegedly harming. So that in and of itself is concerning. And until she makes a statement, suspicion will always be looming around her. That has very little to do with Andrew and has everything to do with her lack of response to Andrew and still showing up with him. Secondly, Beatrice was trying to soften the language around Epstein alongside her mother. They were trying to make him more palatable to the public. This is less of a fallout because of their proximity to Andrew and more of a fallout because they refused to do the right thing. Well, not Beatrice. Beatrice was involved. She didn't email on her own. Her mother was emailing on her behalf and speaking about her and what they were doing regarding trying to soften the language around Epstein. But hell, if that is truly their mission, then she's just as bad as her mom. And then as far as Eugenie, the organization she created and is associated with, I am still very curious as to how she came about that line of work, given what we know now. And I'm not the only one. So as far as the reason they're receiving so much backlash, it's not necessarily because of their behavior, because of their parents' behavior. It's more so their response, or should I say lack of response to what their parents have been accused of and what's been revealed. Not only that, the proximity of the Yorks is a concern. Just having them there, it doesn't look great, especially since so much is up in the air. It'd be different if by this point, Andrew had been found guilty and he's now in jail forever. And Sarah Ferguson, she's not getting to stay at this luxury resort. She's in jail or whatever. And the Yorks are now on this sympathy tour. The York daughters are on a sympathy tour. If everything was more clearly defined, I'm sure the royal family would know how to handle it. And they could probably get a lot of positive press out of it. Just to be fair, if Andrew was in jail, they would probably get a lot of sympathetic press because it would be a very rare occasion and it would be looked at with sympathy. They would be able to spin that. The fact that he is out and about and living his best life and Who knows what's coming next? Because of the gray area, it does leave a lot of room for concern. It also leaves a lot of room for possible assumptions and a lot of possibilities. People don't know what's next. And the thing people fear most of all is the unknown. Is he going to have to answer for his crimes? We don't know yet. Even King Charles said we just have to wait for due process. The waiting game is the hardest game of all. Now listen, do I think a whole lot more royals should be banned from the Royal Ascot? Yeah. Starting with Prince Edward, also Prince William. But since they're a little bit higher on the totem pole, they're not as big of a risk. Based on what was said about Edward, I'm a little surprised his backlash hasn't been bigger. I think because what Andrew is alleged to have done is so bad that Edward is paling in comparison. But if it was only Edward being in the Epstein files and only what was said about him was the focal point, he would absolutely be public enemy number one. It's just that his brother just happened to be that much more of a scum. But anyway, the difference, summing it up, the difference is Harry and Meghan have nothing to do with these people, nor Epstein. So why should they have to answer questions about any of it? The York sisters are not only somehow intertwined and involved in all of this, and they have been named in the Epstein files several times, but they have refused to denounce these people. And they are still very much in close proximity, and they still show up and support them when they can. Not only their parents, but I want to make it very clear that the York sisters, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus or anything, but it is important to note they have been very welcoming to other predators, people who have been preying on their own family members. Jeremy Clarkson and Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan launched a years-long campaign against their cousin-in-law, Meghan Sussex, who was also a friend of Eugenie's before she met Harry. So even on a friendship level, spending time with him, it's just not right. Now, she did leave that pub, and it didn't look like she left in good graces, so maybe she was blindsided with his presence, but Beatrice was hugged all up with him. I haven't seen Beatrice smile that much in my life. She was hugged all up with Piers several times in several photos. And then, of course, we saw Eugenie on a plane with Jeremy Clarkson. We don't know how much contact they had, but I mean, there's a million planes in the world, girl. You didn't have to get on the plane with him on it. So they seem to have a softened view of men who have caused harm, especially to people in their family. And I can understand people being concerned about what else is yet to come, especially since so much is still in the air. So as far as them being blamed for their father's behavior, they're not being blamed. But it's kind of like throw the whole family away until we get clarity. And I would even say not just the House of York, but if I were other people, I wouldn't even want to be around the royals right now. None of them. I wouldn't feel comfortable around not any of them. I wouldn't want to go to their Ascot. I wouldn't want to go to their dances and their parties and their balls and their whatever else. I would decline every invitation for the foreseeable future. But people want to be so close to power that they're willing to sell their souls. These are the moments that define people's character. They're willing to do anything and be photographed with anyone as long as they're in close proximity to power. And so power is just not that important to me. I would rather have dominion over my character and my soul rather than appear in fancy pictures with fancy schmancy predator ass people. Like that's just me. But again, the Yorks, yes, the House of York has fallen, I guess is what people are saying. I keep seeing that the House of York has fallen, but at the end of the day, it was being held up with 2 popsicle sticks and a piece of wadded up gum. So it's not like it has really fallen from grace because they were never really held in any esteem. Andrew has always been a scumbag. And I feel like that's been floating around for a very long time, especially since I've been reporting on them. I started reporting on them in the 2021. And it's always just been kind of like an open secret that he's a scumbag. And then, of course, Virginia Giuffre came out with her allegations, and it was an open and shut case for me. That was me. Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching the SharionSade YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching my content. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video by hitting the thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to comment along the way. If you feel so inclined, please don't forget to share so that more people can find us. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Now let's get back to the video. At this point, it's a waiting game. We'll see once the photos from the Royal Ascot come out who was and was not invited. So if we don't see any of the Yorks, we'll know that this story is more than likely true. They were probably banned, and they probably will be for the foreseeable future. I'll say this. I wouldn't take it too hard. I mean, they have bigger fish to fry right now, but I wouldn't take it too hard because essentially it's just a lukewarm soup of predators and enablers. And who would want to be invited to that? Whether you're in or you're out, everyone's still connected to those people willingly are part of the problem. So anyway, y'all let me know your thoughts. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.